is it a failure if the Jets don't get a Super Bowl win with Aaron Rodgers?
No, it's not. I don't look at it as a failure. Listen, we all know that when you make a trade for Aaron Rodgers, obviously the expectation is to get to a Super Bowl and hopefully play for a championship. But we also got to be realistic as well and look at the path to getting to that Super Bowl in the AFC. We're talking about the best quarterback that we have in our game, and Patrick Mahomes resides in the AFC. We're talking about Joe Burrow, who resides in the AFC. Okay, we're talking about Josh Allen, who resides in the AFC. The list goes on, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, who we think was going to have a bounce back year. The list goes on and on and on as far as the murderer's row of not only teams but quarterbacks that's in this conference. Now, listen, we talk about the Jets in this, this joint practice and the offensive line. I think everyone's dealing with something right now, trying to work through things as far as teams trying to get prepared for the season. But there's no guarantee that the Jets are going to make it to a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. The only thing guaranteed is you have an opportunity to compete, go toe-to-toe with some of these top quarterbacks. But to sit here and say, well, since the Jets traded for Aaron Rodgers, like they have to win a Super Bowl, come on, man. That's not even we can't even see it. That's not even believable.
Oh.
That's not even believable. They have an opportunity, but to sit here and say it would just be an abject failure, I'm not willing to go there.
I think you took the words right out of my mouth. I think it is an abject failure if they don't make a Super Bowl while they have Aaron Rodgers on this roster. Look, they didn't give up the first round pick swap this year, the other picks, and then that conditional second that is way more than likely to become a first round pick going into 2024 because it's at 65% threshold. He has to play with playing slaps. He obliterated that last year. It's going to become a first round pick after this season. They don't make this move if they don't expect to get to the Super Bowl and win one with Aaron Rodgers. They've had so much quarterback futility. We all know this. That is what is synonymous with the New York Jets. The caveat is that they don't have to do it in year one of Aaron Rodgers. Effectively, we know what this deal is. It's basically a 3-year contract for him. They've got a 1 to 3 year window to make this happen. I don't expect them to go from 7-10 last year all the way to a Super Bowl this year, but it's got to be gradual. It's got to be 7-10 to a playoff berth at minimum. Get there, win a game, don't win a game, but that puts even more pressure on 2024. People are going to be out of jobs if they don't win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers on this roster. Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, the hot seat conversation will only increase next year if they don't show that they can try to get on the trajectory to get there. But by the time this is all said and done, if they don't win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, that is an investment that did not have the return they expected on it.
They don't need to win the Super Bowl, but what they do need is established credibility. And when we think about what happened with Tom Brady going to Tampa, he created this aura of association. And we've already seen that a little bit with Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb going to the Jets. But the reality is this. They have to fix this offensive line. And Aaron Rodgers spent $35 million, and he's essentially the general manager of the New York Jets, and he has this great assistant in Joe Douglas. And they need to go fix this offensive line. It could be Zach Martin. It could be David Bakhtiari. Look, the Jets have a history of hiring GMs who overpay offensive linemen. That is well documented. And if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I am going to make sure that we get that done. And I don't want to quibble that, hey, we're $2 million apart with Zach Martin, because I put my money where my mouth is, and we're going to fix this offensive line, and I gave you $35 million. And that's why they can walk before they run. If they make the playoffs, if they win a playoff game like D-Wood and I did, that creates this aura of association going into the off-season. That's why Courtney and me, look, of course they want to win the Super Bowl, but this is an organization that hasn't made the playoffs since 2010, and therefore walk before you run, get into the dance, win a game or two, and then build on that momentum for 2024.
It sounds good, Damian Woody. It sounds good, Mike T. But when you go get a quarterback that's a 4-time MVP award winner, a Super Bowl champion in 2020, 2021, threw 85 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, you're not going to get that guy to say, hey, guys, let's win a playoff game in 2023. Let's potentially win 2 in 2024. You're going to get a guy like Aaron Rodgers to contend to compete for a Super Bowl and a chance to win a Super Bowl only. That's the way I look at it. Courtney talked about the collateral that you gave Green Bay, and potentially if Aaron Rodgers plays a certain percentage of plays, that second-round draft pick turns into a first-round draft pick. So when I'm looking at the entire landscape and I'm looking at this defense, in which was a top 5 defense in the National Football League last year, I'm looking at Aaron Rodgers coming over. I'm looking at Aaron Rodgers being invested into the organization. You're damn right I'm expecting to win a Super Bowl. I'm not going to get no A-Rod to say, hey, gal, guess what? Courtney, man, it was great. We made the playoffs last year with Aaron Rodgers.
We're cool.
We're fine with that. So, and Mike T, I will ask you this. 2008, you went out and got what quarterback?
Yeah, some guy named Brett Favre.
Yeah, Brett Favre. You got him just to win a playoff game, or did you get him to try to contend for a Super Bowl? I'm just a question, Mike T.
Actually, the answer is we got him to beat Tom Brady because we couldn't get to where we wanted to go until we beat Tom Brady. So we felt like Brett Favre could get us there. And once we got past Tom Brady and the Patriots, then we could get to where we wanted to go. But it wasn't
felt like you had a chance to win a Super Bowl.
We didn't get Brett Favre, Harry, on a one-year deal.
Here's my thing. Here's what I would say. Is the expectation to win a Super Bowl? Absolutely. You don't make that trade.
Yeah.
But there's nothing automatic when you're talking about the AFC. Let me ask you this question, Harry, Courtney. Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills. Would you consider them an abject failure right now with the opportunities that they've been presented as far as being in the playoffs and obviously going against Patrick Mahomes and coming up short? Would you consider them an abject failure right now as an organization?
I think they squandered a perfect opportunity to get past Patrick Mahomes when they made a bad decision not to squid kick, when defensively they didn't have the right defense set and allowed Patrick Mahomes to go down and kick a field goal to send that game in overtime. So I don't think they made the proper adjustments to get past Patrick Mahomes. They failed that year. 100% they failed that year.
But the thing with Josh Allen is he's so much younger than Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is going to be 40 years old in December. That window, as we know, you have basically a 3-year contract here. Do we have any sort of guarantee that he's going to fulfill that contract? Tom Brady still had time left on his contract when he decided he wanted to give it up with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But so I don't consider that, like, if they go this run with Josh Allen and they don't win one, yes, that would be considered a failure. To your point, though, Harry, I wanted to bring something up because it reminded me of when I covered the Minnesota Vikings. After that 2017 season where they, lucked their way in a lot of ways to the NFC Championship game, they said, hey, we're a quarterback away. Let's go get Kirk Cousins. Let's upgrade that position. They haven't gotten back to the NFC Championship game since, but they pushed all their chips to the table to say, hey, the playoffs, making it, getting as far as the NFC Championship, that's not our goal. We want to try to get to the Super Bowl. We see an upgrade needed at that position. That's what the Jets are telling you with why they went out to get Aaron Rodgers, why they hedged so much of the future of these people in the front office, the coaching staff, all these jobs that will be on the line if they can't get the ultimate job done. But we'd be crazy to neglect the fact that the AFC, especially the AFC, is a pretty tough division to get it done in.
And Courtney, that's really my point at the end of the day. Like, context is everything here. Zach Wilson was awful last year. If Aaron Rodgers takes this team to the championship game and beats a Joe Burrow, a Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes in the AFC championship game, and they get to the Super Bowl and fall short against, Philly, San Fran, whomever, that's a great year for the New York Jets and something they could build off of going forward. I would tell you from a front office perspective, day one, we got Aaron Rodgers. Day 2, 3, and 4, all we're doing is trying to keep Aaron Rodgers, and us having postseason success, albeit short of a Super Bowl, would still be success because that gives us a much better chance of Aaron Rodgers being with us in 2024.
And Mike T, I would say this. If the New York Jets get through all those teams and those quarterbacks that you just mentioned, and they have an opportunity to play for the Super Bowl, we talk about how much of a gauntlet the AFC is. I would expect them to win the Super Bowl. Be honest with you, if they're going through Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and all these other teams, and Josh Allen as well, I expect them to be the favorite in the Super Bowl. I expect them to win it if they go through that gauntlet and get to that point.
Our Diana Rossini said earlier today on Get Up that there is significant concern that Burrow will miss week 1. So with all that being said, Mike T, will this be Burrow's best season yet?
Every day we get closer, Christine, I would say no, because calf injuries are really hard to predict, especially on skilled players. It's just not an injury that everyone comes back the same. So, look, they are loaded. I love their offensive line finally. Obviously, Jamar Chase, if not the best receiver, he's certainly in that conversation. But Christine, every day he misses, we just talked about all these great quarterbacks in Baltimore is going to be nipping at their heels all season long. So I don't even think they win the division if he misses material time, even if it's just 2 games, not the 5 that Jamar alluded to.
So there's nothing that he needs to fix mechanically this season. We talked about like highest ceiling for quarterbacks yesterday, and I feel like he's already there, which is why if he can get on the field sooner rather than later, I think he will be in line for a career year. But what scares me is what happened last year, and we know that in the AFC, 1 or 2 games could be the determining factor between how teams finish. This guy, though, is pretty darn good at coming back from deficits and having to adapt in games. Remember when they were down 17-0 on the road at Tampa Bay, the game that they locked up the AFC North when he scored 34 unanswered points? There's been a lot of chips stacked against him in games. That 0-2 start where he throws 4 picks against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's what I worry about with him missing time. But the ability to rebound from that, he's shown that he was able to do that. He threw a career high and a franchise high 35 passing touchdowns last year. And at a time, he was reluctant to run. He was like 25th in scramble yards in 2021, finishes with career highs in rushing attempts last year, rushing touchdowns, rushing yards. If he can get back on the field, let's say by like week 3 at the worst. I know Jamar Chase threw out that week 5 timeline, and that is something that we need to listen to. I don't think that was just some random number that he threw out to. Players know more than they're willing to allude to. You guys both know that. So that worries me. If you have to miss the first quarter of the season, that you're going to get put behind the 8 ball. And like when it comes to the MVP, that's the reason he was never fully in that conversation, because he did miss, he did start behind the 8 ball to start the 2022 season, and then when it became a 2-headed race between Mahomes and Hurts, he wasn't able to catch up and get in that. I hope that he's back before week 5, but that's, again, the several weeks thing. There's no clarity on it, and sounds like they're extending this timeline further than where it started.
I think it all depends on, how many games he's out. Like if he's out 2 to 4 games, I think it's going to be tough. Right? I'll tell you, before this injury happened, I actually picked Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson, one of those 2 guys who was going to win league MVP. But with this calf muscle injury appearing for Joe Burrow, you got to be cautious if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, right? And I know their head trainer, Matt Summers, and he's going to do a phenomenal job, and he's not going to allow Joe Burrow to go out there on that football field without being healthy. Also, if he does go out there without being 100% healthy, now you're opening it up, other injuries that could potentially happen. I can't help but think about Kevin Durant, right? Starting with the calf muscle injury, with the calf injury, the next thing you know, he blew out his Achilles. But I think, when you look at Joe Burrow and what he means to this organization, I'm not worried about them starting 2-3 like they did last season, even though you don't want to do it, because as an organization, when you believe in Joe Burrow like you do, you believe he's a guy that can right the ship and, get you back in good standing. It's just that as far as him having his best season, if he does miss 2 or 4 games, I don't see it being his best season.
I know everyone has talked about the calf injury, and rightfully so. I'm going to look at it from the perspective of, I think when you talk about the Cincinnati Bengals, particularly on offense, the one thing we've talked about the past few years has been their offensive line, their inability to protect Joe Burrow. I think this year they'll probably have their best offensive line that they've had in Cincinnati in quite some time.
I agree.
And I think even with Joe Burrow coming back off the injury, I think that alone will allow him to take his game to even higher level, because we've seen Joe Burrow every year, it seems like, run for his life behind the offensive line. It's not like the Cincinnati Bengals haven't been throwing assets to try to fix this offensive line. I think for the first time, I think those guys will finally start playing together. We know they acquired Orlando Brown coming over from the Kansas City Chiefs to play left tackle. So I think the combination of the assets that they already had, bringing in Orlando Brown, I think that unit will allow, whenever Joe Burrow comes back, to play at his highest level that we've seen him play in the National Football League.
So I got 2 thoughts. First of all, I don't think you can have your best season and not win the division, and not all games are created equal. And those first 2 games are division games. So if he's not 100% by the time we start, I think, again, Cincinnati could be looking at Baltimore just in terms of winning the division. That's how close it is. And I must say, Harry, you mentioned the torn Achilles like Kevin Durant. Just so we know, There is somebody on our set today that finished an NFL playoff game with a torn Achilles, and it's one of the toughest things I've ever seen any NFL player do.
But you said you overpaid that guy, right?
Both those things can be true.
Caveat in
Both
all
those
of
things
this,
can be
because
true.
we know that we know this several weeks timeline has continued. They've continued to say that that's what it is. If it was that severe, wouldn't they have gone out and signed a backup quarterback, a more viable backup quarterback option than Trevor Siemian or Jake Browning, who they have on their depth chart right now? Teddy Bridgewater just signed a contract yesterday to be in Detroit. I feel like that would be maybe a more telling sign of maybe it's less severe. They're just trying to not put any sort of number on the days in practice to get him back. I think that they would have taken more precautionary measures to have a bigger fail-safe in there, a more reliable one than the backup quarterbacks that they have if they expected Joe Burrow to be out, that 5-week timeline, that magic number that Jamar Chase threw out. That's my only concern.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.